From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Morning Line with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. Nick Barris here on a Wednesday. And listen, you can join in the conversation. I really would like to hear what you think. Maybe if you've been paying attention, or you'll hear what we talk about and comment on it. This was a case that we looked very closely at. Resources were somewhat of an issue, but we were thinking of doing the RaDonda Vaught case gavel to gavel, like we've done some other ones. We were not able to, but we've been covering it, starting with the trial yesterday. If you haven't been following it, she's the Vanderbilt nurse charged with a reckless homicide, a criminal charge for having made a mistake and given the wrong medicine to a patient who ended up dying, all right? No one is saying she did it intentionally, but they're saying she did so recklessly, and that is a case that's gone to trial, and it's a key case because really it raises the question, doctors and nurses make mistakes. Are they gonna have to be looking over their shoulder now? You know, not only if they make a mistake like that, could they face a malpractice suit, but could they be charged criminally? It's a fascinating case. We're going to talk about that this morning, along with we can get into other malpractice issues as usual. We're just lucky to have, in my opinion, one of the best malpractice attorneys in the state joining us today. And isn't it not true, Clint Kelly, that is, that in most cases, okay, when there's a mistake that happens with the medical profession, it leads to someone like you and a civil lawsuit for malpractice. And certainly, I would imagine a settlement was made in this case between the Vaught family and Vanderbilt, civilly. But there's a criminal layer here now.
Yeah, this is a timely segment, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. I'm glad you could come on today.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head at the very beginning, which is, I think, the goalpost for this trial. Is it a mistake, which begs more for a not guilty verdict?
Right.
Or is it recklessness, which suggests that there would be a guilty verdict, because that seems to be where the battle is going to be fought in this trial. It's certainly where the battle would be fought if it were a civil case, but the standard here, obviously, it must be proof beyond a reasonable doubt, so the state's going to have a significant burden. This is you also raised another point, too. This is an issue where our nurses and doctors going to be providing care and worried that they're going to have to answer to the badge if something goes wrong. That was initially my concern all along with this criminal case, was the fact we have a civil justice system that's designed to deal with these matters and deal with them every time. And then there's the criminal justice system, which this is such a rarity to see this type of lawsuit.
So the whole country's watching this case.
So it's going to have profound ramifications, I think, for not only the medical and healthcare profession, but also for how other prosecutors across the country will view these types of situations if either the civil justice system fails in a case, or if the family believes there needs to be more done beyond just simply getting compensation in a lawsuit. Okay,
let me ask you this, and we're going to queue up in a moment here, and we're showing some of the video, and there is RaDonda Vaught from yesterday, the first day. We may play a story from 10 o'clock last night that kind of recapped what happened. But let me ask you this, in your mind, Clint, where does that line become, you know, from malpractice to something criminal? Because I talked to Glenn Funk, and I said, you know, he's been on this show. He's the district attorney who decided to bring these criminal charges. And I said, Glenn, people make mistakes. And he goes, Nick, I'm paraphrasing here, I know people make mistakes. And he goes, you know what, if this had been one or two fail-safes that she went past and just didn't notice, and this poor woman died, maybe not. But he said, Nick, by my count, she bypassed 10 fail-safes and did not see it and pay attention. And I know she didn't intentionally mean to kill this woman, but it rose to the level. It was so reckless that, in his mind, criminal charges, and I kind of can see that. If she had just missed the bottle, and it was just one bottle, and she didn't look at it, kind of like the famous scene from It's a Wonderful Life, where the pharmacist there and the Jimmy Stewart character as a child says, oh, you were going to give the wrong thing, and he was distraught. I can understand the mistake like that happening. But he goes, Nick, it's not that. This was 10, at least 10 missed things where she just blew it off. And in my mind, it was reckless. Where's that line?
Yeah, in the cases that I try where I'm litigating against a hospital and there's a nurse or physician involved that's injured a patient, the way I look at it is, what were the choices made by the healthcare provider. Because really all it comes down to are choices that are made. And the way I would view this situation, it's the difference between a careless choice and a series of dangerous choices. To me, that's where the dividing line is between the two. Because everyone makes mistakes, professional mistakes, that, you know, you look back on and say, God, I wish I'd done things differently.
Oh, we all do.
But it's a different character when someone makes unsafe decisions over the course of someone's treatment, where it appears as if they not only don't care, but they're just violating the rules that they were taught as a professional. And I also think the death itself, Nick, the way the patient died is a significant factor in this, because she died a horrible death, suffocating,
paralyzed,
while you're paralyzed by a drug that will not let you talk, will not let you move, will not let you reach for oxygen, knowing that you're going to die. I don't know if this lady was conscious, but whether she is or she isn't, her body knows that it's dying. Has to be a substantial factor in why this prosecution was brought.
Yeah, if people are missing it, she had gone there, an older woman, for a brain bleed, and they had stabilized her, and they had prescribed a drug that she was going to have a PET scan, and she got anxiety. And it was supposed to lower her anxiety, started with the same letter as this other drug, and that's where she didn't get the anxiety drug, she got the paralytic drug, as you said, that paralyzed her. And you're right, just an awful, awful death.
I don't mean to scare you, but I mean, the truth is the truth. People look at this and think, my gosh, how does this happen? I had a lawsuit very similar to this years ago involving a hospital where a patient was in a CT unit and was given a drug to paralyze them so that scans could be made of the patient's face. And the equipment that provides oxygen, the ventilator, the tanks were only half full. And the patient asphyxiated and suffered profound brain damage. These things happen.
Yes.
And that's part, unfortunately, of being in the healthcare system. What I think saves patients are other nurses and the administration looking at the conduct of someone like Nurse Vaught to see, is there a pattern?
By the way, that case you just said that you handled, were there criminal charges brought in that case? There weren't. There's a lot of layers to this we're going to get to, including what role Vanderbilt Medical Center may have played, because there were problems with that, and that's what the defense is bringing up. But if we have, Mary Elena, that story queued up from 10 o'clock last night, let's play that to give people a little more background of what happened in the courtroom on day one of this trial, if we have it. Let's have a look.
So when a nurse needs to get a medication from...
A former Vanderbilt nurse charged with reckless homicide and impaired adult abuse finally has her day in court. Prosecutors argued RaDonda Vaught should be held responsible for her actions, which resulted in the death of one of her patients.
RaDonda Vaught recklessly ignored everything that she learned in school and everything that this pen represents.
Vaught's attorney countered by saying she was a well-respected nurse who made an honest mistake, and systemic failures at the hospital contributed to the error.
What happened on December 26, 2017 was a tragic mistake. It was unintentional. But one thing that's not been discussed at all and was not mentioned at all in the state's opening statement is the problems that were going on at the Vanderbilt University Medical Center at that time in 2017.
While a patient in the Vanderbilt ICU, 74-year-old Charlene Murphy was supposed to receive a sedative, but Vaught gave her a powerful paralyzer instead. Murphy's daughter-in-law described the scene.
I saw my mother-in-law with all those people around her, working on her.
Several former and current employees at Vanderbilt University Medical Center also took the stand. Vaught hung her head and cried multiple times and was especially emotional while listening to the audio recording of her interview with a TBI agent where she described what happened.
I'm worried, scared, upset. She asked what I was worried about, and I was like, well, I'm worried because my mistake caused a patient essentially to die.
If convicted of reckless homicide, Vaught faces up to 10 years in prison.
You'll have more than enough evidence, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the defendant is guilty.
She's been tested throughout this ordeal, and this is the final test.
Emily Luxon, News Channel 5.
Whew, boy, that is just heavy watching that. It was a nice overview. All right, we're going to talk more as we go through, but before we take the break, the defense, and maybe you can add some insight to this, is saying, look, we're not denying what she did, but this happened because of failings at Vanderbilt Medical Center and the fact that this system that delivers the drugs wasn't working, and that all the nurses there of late, because they had technical problems, were bypassing things. What do you think of that?
I think it's a proper defense. I think it's part of Peter's job to raise that.
Peter Stryance, the defense attorney.
Correct, and I think it is a factor to consider in terms of what was on Nurse Vaught's mind, her approach to the care and the situation. The hospitals have responsibility to train their staff properly.
Now, okay, now the hospital, though, and would you agree that there was likely a fairly hefty, quietly handled civil settlement in this? I would imagine for the family. Probably, what kind of settlement would you get in something like this?
Well, let's remember, we have a $750,000 non-economic damages cap in Tennessee.
Okay.
So unless she had significant economic damages like lost earning capacity, it's likely there was only $750,000 paid for what is one of the worst deaths. We've talked about that many times, how the law, and that may be a factor in this as well. Is $750,000 enough for a woman who suffocates to death when she is paralyzed? Or should there be more punishment meted out against the health care providers? And we can talk about this after the break. The case I referred to, where I said I had a similar case to this 20 years ago, it was against Vanderbilt.
Okay.
The only difference in that case was there weren't a series of bad choices made that led to the man being severely brain damaged. It was really just a couple of choices, but the outcome is the same.
Yeah. Well, as you've told me in the past, I mean, the large settlements are there for the families when they win, when they deserve it, if a jury delivers it. It's also to get the attention of the hospital so that they make corrections so they don't do it again because they had to pay through the nose. And I'm sorry, $750,000 for a horrible loss like that. You know as well as I do, that's chump change for some of these hospitals with the money they make.
It's completely it's not justice.
Yeah, it's not. And that's a problem with tort law and the fact that our lawmakers keep lowering what you can sue for, and it's ridiculous. We'll take a break. What do you think, by the way, to this point, if you're paying attention? Should she have faced criminal charges? Do you have a feeling on the case? We can take a few of those calls, but when we come back, we're going to go much more into detail about this as well. And if you have a question about malpractice, now's your chance as well with Clint. But this is the topic at the moment because there's no one better to talk about this than with you this morning. We'll be right back with more right after this.